The clock ticks down to what's being dubbed the most important VP clash in history. President Trump's COVID-19 diagnosis giving the one and only debate between Mike Pence and Kamala Harris added profile. France accuses Turkey of military involvement in Nagorno-Karabakh, complaining this risks fueling the internationalization of the conflict between Armenian and Azerbaijani forces. And coronavirus infections surge in France as it reports close to 19,000 cases in 24 hours, a second daily record that could prompt new restrictions. Welcome to the France 24 newsroom in Paris. I'm Alexander Rorcott. Now, the final touches, including plexiglass screens separating the candidates, are being put to the venue for the running mate clash between Mike Pence and Kamala Harris. Both of them have provided negative COVID-19 tests ahead of the showdown that comes as the virus has infected President Trump and many others of his inner circle. The candidates will now be hoping to show their suitability to stand in as commander-in-chief if necessary, and the recent developments have made that scenario more likely than ever. Maria Sophos has this preview.
It's not traditionally an event that sparks much interest in the minds of American voters. Nonetheless, some are calling Wednesday's vice presidential debate between Mike Pence and Kamala Harris the most important in US history. It comes as President Donald Trump steps back from campaigning to battle COVID-19 amid a White House outbreak that has infected a number of high-profile Republicans. It's a precarious moment for the Trump campaign as the president trails behind Joe Biden in national polls by 12 percentage points.
For the Trump campaign, there are many Republicans who may not be super comfortable with Trump's personality, with a lot of his rhetoric, but may still feel in sync with a lot of conservative values, a lot of conservative policies that people may see more represented in Pence. And on the Democratic side, there are many Democratic voters who are maybe not super excited about Biden, but maybe like what the future of the party looks like with someone like Kamala Harris.
With both presidential candidates in their 70s and in light of Trump's diagnosis, Pence and Harris will be keen to show that they could step into the limelight if duty called. The incumbent vice president, a soft-spoken evangelical Christian known for his undying loyalty to Trump, is sure to target his opponent's liberal policies and present the Democratic campaign as beholden to the radical left. Though he's usually unshakable in the face of media scrutiny, Pence is likely to have a hard time steering the debate away from the US government's mismanagement of the COVID-19 crisis. As chairman of President Trump's coronavirus task force, he has been criticised for not mounting a clear strategy to tackle the pandemic, even as the national death toll surpasses 210,000. For her part, Kamala Harris, the first woman of colour to run as vice president, is faced with her most high-profile opportunity to make a case for the Democratic ticket. While COVID-19 will undoubtedly be high up on her agenda, it's also a chance to address racial injustice in the US, as well as voice concern about Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominees.
Now, do stay tuned to France 24. We'll be broadcasting the full debate live with a special starting in just over 25 minutes' time, and the debate itself starting at 3 a.m. Paris time. Well, staying in the United States, and the former Minneapolis police officer charged with the murder of George Floyd has been released from prison after posting a $1 million bail bond. Derek Chauvin has been in detention since shortly after the incident back in May, when he knelt on the neck of the black man for almost 9 minutes, cutting off his airflow and causing his death. It's not clear where Chauvin was able to get those funds from. The case has sparked riots and demonstrations in several US states, and following the news of his release, the governor of Minnesota, where he was being held, has deployed the National Guard to keep the peace. Moving on, and France has accused Turkey of military involvement on the side of Azerbaijan in its conflict with Armenia over the breakaway Nagorno-Karabakh region. French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian telling French Parliament earlier that this risks fueling the internationalisation of the conflict.
La nouveauté, c'est qu'il y a une implication militaire de la Turquie qui risque d'alimenter l'internationalisation du conflit, ce que nous ne souhaitons pas. Et donc nous affichons très clairement notre volonté de faire en sorte que ce compromis qui consiste à dire on renonce à toute conditionnalité, on respecte le cessez-le-feu et on rentre en négociation, puisse aboutir à une solution positive, partagée, même si ça prend un peu de temps.
Well, later this Thursday, Azerbaijan's foreign minister is due to meet the leaders of the OSCE's Minsk group in Geneva, jointly chaired by diplomats from France, Russia and the United States, all sides calling for an end to the fighting. Clashes between Armenian and Azerbaijani forces have already displaced half the region's population.
Residents of the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region take refuge in Armenia in the wake of heavy shelling and as fighting continues to rage along the front line.
Я пережила землетрясение, но война вообще из землетрясения хуже. Не хочу.
Հարետագործության պատճառով թողել ենք տուն ու տեղ եկել ենք ստեղ տեղ գյուղում տղայից տուննա մնում ենք ստեղ մեզ համար շատ լավ է որ հյուրեր ենք ընդունում հարգում ենք բոլորին մենք սիրում ենք մեր հյուրերին մեր ժողովրդին մեր հայրենիքը մենք հպարտ ենք մեր ժողովրդով.
The Nagorno-Karabakh region's main city, Stepanakert, has been hit by new strikes in recent days. Much of its 50,000-strong population has left, with those still there hiding out in cellars. The city has become a ghost town dotted with unexploded munitions and shell craters. Azerbaijan says some of its cities outside the conflict zone have also been struck, including its second-largest city, Ganja.
Uzanıp buradan televizora bakırdım. Çocuklar da oturmuştu burada, yemeği hazırlayırdılar. Onun da birden geldi düştü oraya.
Dozens of civilians have been confirmed killed on both sides, and while Armenia has acknowledged more than 300 military deaths, Azerbaijan has not admitted to any fatalities among its troops.
Now, here in France, coronavirus infections are continuing to skyrocket as the nation reported a second daily record, almost 19,000 cases in the space of just 24 hours. This comes shortly after the introduction of new restrictions in hotspot areas, including Paris, where bars and cafes have been closed for 2 weeks since Tuesday. The government will host a press conference later on Thursday, where new measures are set to be introduced to curb the spread of the disease. Andrew Hillier has more.
Piling on more measures as France scrambles to stop a surge in infections. For Emmanuel Macron, his government has no choice but to tighten restrictions again.
Et donc, il y aura bien sûr, dans notre stratégie, dans les endroits où ça circule trop vite, et en particulier où ça circule beaucoup chez les personnes âgées qui sont les plus vulnérables et où on voit de plus en plus de lits occupés aux urgences, eh bien, on doit aller vers plus de restrictions.
Doctors warn that France's handling of the pandemic is worsening by the day. On Wednesday alone, close to 19,000 cases of coronavirus were recorded, setting a new record. The number of patients currently being treated in hospital has hit a 3-month high, leading to fears that France's health system could be overwhelmed if the situation doesn't improve. Nationwide, 9% of tests end up giving positive readings for the virus. The latest measures will add to a string of restrictions already put in place for cities like Marseille 10 days ago. On Tuesday, bars and sports clubs in Paris and its surrounding regions were ordered to close. It's now likely that other cities across the country will be forced to adopt similar restrictions.
A Kenyan court has found 2 men guilty of taking part in the 2013 jihadist attack on Westgate Shopping Mall. Al-Shabaab militants who claim responsibility killed at least 67 people in Nairobi during the 4-day-long siege, with 4 of the attackers killed by Kenyan forces. The 2 convicted men are accused of aiding those attackers and will be sentenced in 2 weeks' time, while a 3rd man was acquitted. Devastating floods have destroyed buildings, bridges and roads in southeastern France and parts of Italy, cutting off communities in the Alpine region and leaving at least 13 dead across the 2 countries and many more missing. The record rainfall that began last Friday has caused damage that will take months to repair. Entire homes have been swept away, while bodies in the cemetery have been unearthed. President Macron visited the area using a helicopter to hop from village to village where roads have become impassable. James Facina has more.
flying from one village to another by helicopter was the only way for the president to get around. Emmanuel Macron paid a visit to those whose homes were swept away by floods last week, after Storm Alex wreaked havoc in the south of France, cutting off villages from one another and claiming several lives.
Non, on a eu la sensation d'être oubliés pendant 48 heures. Mais vous savez que c'est très dur. Il y a des gens qui ont tout perdu.
A visit to also lend support to the rescue workers who saved hundreds of residents, but many are still missing.
The human toll is a heavy one, and before anything else, I want to spare a thought for the families of the victims. Together with the ministers here, we will continue to mobilise all of the resources on a national level to continue to look for those who are missing and continue rescue operations and rebuild access routes.
Storm Alex swept across France from one coast to another. Unusually heavy rains caused flash floods as it hit the Riviera and neighbouring Italy, with the army stepping in to rescue those unable to leave their homes. Emmanuel Macron has promised several hundreds of thousands of euros to rebuild the communities and vowed to assess the progress by returning within the year.
Now, some people blaming climate change for these weather conditions. Indeed, September this year was the hottest on record. The European Union's Earth observation programme has concluded. The figures come as no surprise to scientists who say January as well as May this year have also broken records. James Wilson reports.
Sweltering in the September sun. The unseasonably warm weather might have been pleasant for Parisians, but scientists say news that globally September 2020 was the hottest on record should concern us all. More worryingly still, last month wasn't even an outlier. January and May 2020 also broke records, and June and April came close too. Data from the European Union's Earth observation programme found that for the 12-month period through September, the Earth was on average 1.3 degrees Celsius warmer than it was before the industrial age. That figure is alarmingly close to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, the best-case scenario envisaged in the 2015 Paris Agreement, in which governments agreed to try and slow the rise in global temperatures. If the planet gets any warmer, the risk of life-threatening heat waves, water shortages and flooding increases hugely. Large numbers of species will also be at risk of extinction. Sea ice levels in the Arctic are another concern. At one point last month, scientists found that the area of ocean covered by ice in the high north was the second lowest figure on record. The Arctic is warming at twice the rate of the rest of the planet, and on current trends, the region could lose its summer ice coverage entirely. A United Nations climate summit is due to be held in Glasgow in the United Kingdom next year, when governments from across the world will gather to discuss how nations can reduce global carbon emissions and slow the rise in temperatures.
Well, that's the end of this edition, but if you want more on any of those stories and more, do visit our website, france24.com. That's available in English, Spanish, Arabic and French. As you can see, our top story is the Pence and Harris square-off for what's being dubbed the most important VP debate in history. You can also stay tuned to France 24. In a little over 15 minutes' time, we'll be broadcasting our special on the debate and leading up to showing the full debate live from 3 a.m. Paris time. Please stay with us.